In this tutorial, we are going to be creating the vectors you can currently see on screen. We will be using many tools in the software to create, edit and distort our vectors. We will also be demonstrating on how to import an image of something that we may have drawn by hand and then use the software to automatically create vectors around it. So let's start by opening a fresh copy of the software and creating a new file. For this job we're going to specify a width of 19 inches and a height of 9 inches. We're going to specify the Z0 to be off the top of the block, and we're going to specify the material thickness to be 3/4 of an inch. For this design we're going to specify the XY datum position to be in the centre, and we're going to keep our units in inches, and when we've done that just press OK. We're going to start by creating a few simple shapes, the first being a circle. So under create vectors you'll find that there's the draw circle tool, and when we're in here we want to specify the centre point to be x0 and y0, so it'll be the centre of our material, and we want to specify the diameter as 8 inches. And when we've specified those, just press create and then close. The next shape that we want to create is a rectangle. So we go to create vectors and we find the draw rectangle tool, and we want to specify the anchor point to be the centre of our work area, and we want that to be x0, y0, and we want to make sure we have square corners. I want to specify the width to be 18 inches and the height to be 4 inches. And when we've specified all that, we can press create, and again we can press close. With our simple shapes created, we want to make a few edits to the rectangle. So to do this, we're going to need to go into node editing mode. So we can do that by either using the shortcut N on the keyboard or coming over to the node editing mouse icon here. When we're in node editing, we can simply select our rectangle, and this basically shows you the constituent points of a vector. So in each corner you'll find that we have a node, and in between these nodes we have what we call spans, and this is represented by the squiggly icon underneath our mouse pointer. Also, between each span we have a virtual midpoint, which is represented here, here and here on all the spans. And what we want to do is we want to take advantage of those midpoints, and we want to turn those into usable points. So to do this, we simply come over one of the virtual midpoints and right click on the mouse and click to insert a point. And again we can do that for the bottom one here and click to insert a point. And what we want to do now is we want to edit the position of that point. Now we do this by hovering again over with the mouse and then right clicking, and then we go to properties, and this will give you the exact position as to where it is at the moment. Now keep it in absolute, and we want to just move that down ½ an inch, so we will specify the Y value to be 1.5, then click apply. I want to do the same for the other one but the opposite direction, so again right click, properties, and this time we just want to change the Y value to -1.5. And once we've done that, we can then exit the node editing. So we can do that by either coming over to the edit objects and selecting the selection mode arrow, or we can hit escape on the keyboard. Next we're going to take our newly created vectors and create some offsets. We're then going to edit these, which are going to form our construction vectors, which will aid us in the rest of our design process. So to start with, we're going to offset our rectangle. So simply select our rectangle and then come down to offset selected vectors. We're going to offset this inwards by a distance of 0.8 inches. Ensure that create sharp offset corners is selected, and select new can stay there. So then just press the button to offset and then close that form. Next we're going to want to draw a polyline from this corner to this corner. And the reason we want to do that is because we want to trim the centre sections off. So we're just left with this part here, but we want to do it so it's just slightly over the edge of our circle. So what we want to do is come to the draw polyline tool, snap to the intersection here, and then drag down with the mouse to this other intersection here. And then when we're happy with that line, press spacebar. Then again click to form the other line, To then exit the Create Polyline tool, we can simply just press down once on the right mouse button. Next, we're going to then trim these two sections which we want to remove. So simply come to the interactive trim tool and then just come over the lines and just simply click once over those. We're finished with that now, so we can simply close this form. We are also finished with the lines that we just drawn, so we can simply come over those and left mouse button to select, and then shift and select the other line, and we can delete those by simply pressing the delete key on the keyboard. Next, we want to make an offset of our circle, so simply select the circle and come over to the offset selected vectors. We're going to offset this inwards, and we're going to do this one by a distance of 1.1 inches, and then press the offset key. We can now close this, and what we want to do, again, we want to use the interactive trim tool. So select that, and this time we want to remove these parts of our circle that we just created. So simply come over those and remove those, and then close. We're at a stage now where we've got two different types of vectors on our screen. We've got our design vectors, and then we've also got our construction vectors, which we're going to use later on in the design. So the best thing to do when we get to this type of stage is to actually start organising our vectors. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move our construction vectors onto a new layer. So if we just shift and select these vectors, and we can then right mouse click over any of those vectors, and we can select to move to layer, and I'm going to select the new layer option, and I'm going to name this layer construction, and I'm going to just make sure that's invisible at the moment. I'm going to make sure it's not the active layer, and I'm going to press OK, and those vectors should now disappear off our screen, like so. Just for layer management, I'm now going to rename our first one, so we're going to call that outline shape. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish off making our outline shape by welding these two vectors together. So to do that, simply select both of those and then come over to the edit objects and select to weld the selected vectors, and this will just then create the outline of the shapes that are selected. With our new shape still selected, I'm going to come over and create a few offsets. So I'm going to do that by going to the Offset Selected Vectors tool. I'm going to offset this inwards. I'm going to offset it inwards by a distance of 0.2 inches. I'm going to ensure that the Create Sharp Offset Corners is selected, and I'm going to select to make sure that the new offset is selected once I've created it. And then I'm going to press Offset. And as you can see, our new offset that's just been created is now highlighted in pink. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another offset from that offset by 0.1 inches. And then I'm going to press Offset again, and then close. That final offset has completed our design for our outline shape. So what we can do now is we can turn on our construction layer, and I'm going to hide the visibility of our outline shape as we don't need to see that anymore. So just click once on the bulb. You'll notice that the outline shape will now glow red. Now this is because this is still the active layer, and it glows red to alert you that it's actually invisible at the moment. So anything that we do create would be going onto an invisible layer. So we can bypass this by simply selecting the construction layer, or we can then add our own layer, which is what we're going to do for our new objects we're going to create. So click to add a new layer, and just call the new layer text. And as it's shown in bold, that means that is the current active layer. Now I do want to keep the construction layer visible, because what we're going to do is we're going to use these vectors that we created on the construction layer to aid us in the next part of the design. Once we've done that, we can click Close on the Layers form. The next thing we're going to want to do is to create a star. So come to Create Vectors and then select to Draw a Star. Now our star is going to want to have 5 points. We can simply just come to the center and just drag one of those out with our mouse, or we can specify specific values. So for this we're going to have an outer radius of 1/2 inch. Now for our particular star, when it's upright like this, we want to make sure our star has perfect horizontal straights along the top there. So for this we need to specify a very specific inner radius percentage, which is 38.2. Now if we hit apply, you'll see that our star now has perfectly horizontal points. So we can click close on that. Our next task is to get these stars and copy them all across the top of this arc here. So to accomplish that, what we need to do is we need to use this tool down here, which is called Copy Object Along Vectors. So if we just simply select that, we will be presented with a few options. Now what we want to do is we want to copy this star, and we want to copy it 5 times along this arc here. So to do that, we can simply use this option to copy object. Now what that expects us to do is first of all select the object that we want to copy, and then secondly select the object that we want to copy it along. So all I need to do now is just simply hold shift down and select the second arc, and then I can then specify the number of copies that I want. So make sure you do check this option here, and we do want 5, so I'm just going to type 5 in there. We do want to align objects to this curve, and we don't want to create copies in a new layer, so we'll uncheck that. And what we do now is we simply press copy. Now as you can see, that's done exactly what we've asked. It's copied our 5 stars along our arc. What it hasn't done though is it hasn't placed them in the way that I would like them, that being the tops of our stars all facing outwards. So this is all down to the fact that our arc that we actually use to copy our stars along is all to do with the start and end points of that line. So what we can do is if we want to have these facing outwards, we can then simply reverse the direction. So if we just check that and then press copy, our stars, our tops of our stars, should now face outwards, like so. So now I'm happy with that. We can simply click close on the form. We can deselect in the white space and then just select the star. As we're no longer going to need this, we can simply hit delete on the keyboard. And I'm just going to zoom out so I can press F on the keyboard to zoom to our work area. And the next thing we're going to concentrate on is adding some text to our work area. So simply come up to the Draw Text tool, and what we're going to do is we're going to specify all in capitals, 5, and then on a new line, so press enter, star, and enter again, coffee. And we want to use a true type font, and we want to use Times New Roman. Let's say if it didn't come up straight away, we can simply, for instance, just start typing Times New Roman with the drop down open, and then just simply select that. We do want to have our text bold, and we do want to have the text alignment in the center. We're going to specify a height for our text as 0.8 inches, and we're going to hit apply and then close. As you can see at the moment, this is all coming as one, so this is all one text item at the moment. But what we can do is we can simply select it, right click, and we can break the text block into lines. So what this is going to do is that each of these lines now is going to be its own text element. So what we can do is simply select it once, and if we select it again, that will take us into transform mode, and we can then move the text into their own spaces. So I'm going to stick the 5 over in this corner, and then the star is going over in the right hand side, and the coffee can then move to the bottom here. So our next task is going to be adding this text here around this arc here. So for this, we simply come over and wrap text along a curve. And this is the same again. So first of all, it expects us to first select the item we want to copy, and then secondly, shift and select the arc that we want to copy it around. And we can then come over to the options on the form here, and we can select to have the text position on the curve, like so. And then we can select the text alignment to be the center, the middle here. And if we just click apply, and as you can see, again, due to the fact that the start and end points of our curve is now wrapped our text, what we would like to say is the wrong way around. So if we want to rectify this, we can simply use this option here, which is going to put the text on the other side. So if we just check this, you want to set that now, put it the right way around. Looking at our text, you may also notice that the spacing in between each of the characters is quite bunched up. So what we can do is we can use this option here, the text spacing, and we can try and edit the spaces in between each of the characters. But this is going to increase the space all equally. So as you can see, between the C and the O, it may look a lot larger than between this F and this F here. So what we may need to do is we need to close this form and actually use the Edit Text Spacing and Curve option. So if we just select that and come over and select our text, we can then individually increase or decrease the spacing in between each of the characters. So clicking in between each character will decrease the space. If you want to increase the space between letters, you need to hold the Shift key down and then click with the left mouse button. So just click in between, so it looks visually to your eye that they're equally spaced. And when we're happy with that, we can simply come out of that mode by pressing Escape on the keyboard. And we can then move on to editing our text 5 and start. So for this, we're going to be using the distort tool. And what we're going to do is we're going to distort this text in between this line, and this text here between this line and this line. Now to do this, we just need two lines. So at the moment we've just got one continuous line, for each, so we need to split these up. So to do this, we can simply come to Node Select Mode, so we can get into that by pressing N on the keyboard, or we can go under Edit Objects and select the Node Editing tool there. Once we've done that, we can simply come over to our vectors and select them so that we can get all the node points and the spans. And then what we can do is we can hover the mouse over until we get the squiggly line letting us know that we're actually on a span at the moment, and we can simply right click and then press to delete the span. And we can do the same over here, so we just select that, and we can even press D on the keyboard, that'll do the same thing. Now one thing we need to do is we need to make sure that these lines both have the same direction of flow. So this being the start and this being the end, it's flowing from left to right. Now this one, as you can see, is going from right to left. So to change the start and end points, what we need to do, we need to come over a node like so, and right click, and we can make start point like this here. And if we go over here, you'll notice that the bottom one is going from left to right, and the top one is going from right to left. So again, we can change this, but this time we can just hover over this node and then press the letter P on the keyboard, and that'll do exactly the same thing. It will make this node the start point. So once we've done that, we can press Escape on the keyboard, or we can go over to Edit Objects and select the Selection Mode arrow. If we just click into the white space to deselect the current line, and what we can do now is we can go over to Transform Objects and select the Distort Selected Objects tool, which is what we're going to use to distort our text in between these two lines. So first of all, in the form, we want to specify that we want to distort our selection between two curves, so just highlight that there. And next, we're going to now select our object. So first of all, if we select our text, we need to firstly shift and select our bottom line, and then shift and select our top line. If we do it the other way around, the text will be inverted, so everything will be upside down. So if we just click apply once we've done it in that order, and if we just zoom in a little, you will notice that because the height of the V is actually higher than the F, I and E, it's only distorted in between the tops of the letters and down to the bottom of the V. So what we can do is we can use this option here to transform object, and we can just come over and use the drag arrows here to just manually just align the bottom of our letters to the line, like so. And once we've done that, we can then click in the white space and then click close. And if we just hit F on the keyboard, we can then do that to the other text. So if we just do that again, so star, we'll just select that first, and we want to make sure that we're doing it in between two curves. So select star, then shift and select the bottom line, and then hold shift again and select the top line, and then click apply. Again, if we zoom in, you'll notice that it's done the same thing again. Because the S is slightly taller than the other letters that we have here, it's only done the distortion between the tops and bottoms of the S. So the T, A and R are not touching the bottom either. So to change this, what we can do again is just go to the transform object option here and then just manually drag down towards the bottom there. I can even drag up as well so that the tops of the T's and R are both in that as well, like so. And deselect again and then press close and then hit F on the keyboard to zoom to our work area. It's important to note that at this moment in time the text that we distorted is still in a state of distortion. We can tell this by when we come to highlight the text, it actually highlights as if it's one complete object. This allows us to go back into the distortion mode and if we need to, make further edits and distortion to our text. When we're happy with this, we need to make sure that we click this button here to bake the distortion. This will allow all the individual letters now to become their own individual vectors. So we need to do that again for the text star. So simply highlight it, come over to the distort selected objects tool and make sure everything's fine. And when we're happy with it, just to bake the distortion. And when we've done that, just click close and click into the white space to deselect that. So once we're happy with everything that we've just created, we can now turn off the construction layer as we no longer need that. We can turn on our outline shape to see how we're coming along. One last thing I would like to create is a center graphic for the center of our sign. So to do this, we're going to import a bitmap to trace around. So for this, I'm going to turn off the outline shape, and I'm also going to turn off our text layer, and I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to call this center graphic, and then I'm going to click close. To import our image into our job, we're going to use the import bitmap for tracing tool. So simply select that, and in our projects folder we'll find that there's a coffee mug JPEG. So simply select that and press the open button. This will now import our image into our job. You'll also notice it's now created a new layer also called bitmap layer. Now this is the layer that the image has been imported onto. So as you can see, that image has now disappeared when we turn that layer on and off. So what we want to do now is simply create vectors that run around the outside of the solid black colour in our image. Now we can use the tool trace bitmap for this. So with the image selected, we can simply select to trace bitmap, and since our image is pretty much two-tone, so simple black and white colours, we can simply use the black and white option here for the type of tracing that we want. We can also specify the number of colours to use when picking out our vectors. So if I just zoom in a little on the image, you notice that when I select more colours, actually it also picks up a lot more noise around the image as well. So I'm just going to stick to around 50%. Next is our corner fitting option. This will determine how loose or tight the corners are going to be against the colours that it will pick up. So for this, as we only have corners really that we ideally want to pick up around the ends of our lines here that we've drawn, so I want to specify just quite a loose corner fitting. The noise filter will determine how sensitive we want to be at picking up every individual pixel. So to demonstrate this, with the 1 pixel noise filter, we'll just give that a preview. You'll notice that it's picked up the gaps here where there wasn't actually any colour to be picked up. So what we can do to actually get rid of this, we can just raise the noise filter to say 10 and then just preview that again, and you'll notice that now those have disappeared, so we're just left with the outline to our drawing. The bitmap fading option doesn't actually have any effect on the vectors that are going to be drawn around the colours that are selected. It simply allows us to higher or lower the contrast of the actual bitmap in question. So I'm just going to leave that at 52% and keep that, and so if we're happy with what we see on screen at the moment, we simply click apply and we can then close this form. We can now press F on the keyboard to zoom to fit, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to now turn off the bitmap layer so I can just see the center graphic layer and then close that. As with any vectors created in this way, I would strongly recommend that we take a closer look at the vectors that it has created us, as it's not the perfect solution, and we may want to just iron out some points where we don't need them. So first of all, I'm going to suggest that we zoom in closer to the cup graphic. So I'm just going to use the zoom box to do that. I'm going to hit escape on the keyboard to exit the zoom box mode. And then I'm going to come into node editing mode so I can see the constituent points of what builds up our vectors. So come to node editing and then select one of the vectors. And as you can see, there's hundreds and hundreds of tightly packed nodes in here. So it would make it very hard for us to make any edits to these vectors. So what we can do is first of all we can escape node editing, and what we can do is we're going to change these vectors into something that's more usable. So simply highlight all the vectors and then come to fit curves to selected vectors, and in here it gives us three options to change them to. So what I want to do to make this easier for us to edit, I want us to change these spans to bezier curves. So simply select the bezier curves option there. I want to specify a tolerance of 0.03, and I want to uncheck keep sharp corners, and I want to select to replace the currently selected vectors. So once we've done that, we can click preview, and as you can see already, that's made it look a lot nicer to edit. So once we're happy with that, we can press OK to close the form. So now that we've changed these vectors into something nicer to edit, what we can do now is we can go back into node editing mode. So do this by coming to the node edit icon and then selecting the individual vectors. And what we want to do is we want to just either adjust the curve by the control points, or we can simply come over a node and simply just delete that point. And once we've deleted it, we can simply then use the control points to then build that curve back up, like so. And we can do this for all the points where we believe need ironing out. So I know there's a point here, so we can simply delete this point here. So I'm just going to hover over it and press D on the keyboard, and then we can just have a look at how that is now. That looks fine. And once we believe that we've edited our vectors to the best that we can visibly, then we can simply press escape on the keyboard to come back out of node editing mode. And we can press F on the keyboard to zoom to fit. And before we turn the other layers back on, we first of all want to group all the vectors that we can see on screen. This will make it easier when it comes to resizing this image if we need to when the other layers are on. So simply highlight all the vectors again, and we can do this by using this shortcut on the keyboard, which is just literally by pressing the letter G. So do that, and then we can then go ahead and turn back on the outline shape layer and the text layer, and then click close on that layer's form. With our graphic still selected, I'm going to come over and I'm going to click on it once more time to take it into transform mode. And while it's in this mode, we can resize the image so it fits perfectly in between our stars and coffee sign. I'm going to hold shift down and I'm going to grab one of the anchor points, and this is going to then resize it to the center of the image. So as you can see there, once I'm happy, I can just let go, and then I can just jog down with the keyboard, just move it to roughly the center by eye. And even if I need to, I can just use this top right blue node here, and that will rotate the image. So I can just rotate it so it's a bit more horizontal. And then I can click into the white space to deselect that. That now completes the design, so we can go ahead and go to File and then Save, and we can then save our work to use in the next toolpathing tutorial. So I'm just going to save mine as 5-star coffee _ draw. If yours hasn't quite turned out like the one that is on screen, you can either obviously spend a few more minutes just making some alterations, or you can use our pre-prepared file in the projects folder and you can use that in conjunction with our toolpathing tutorial.